Uh-oh. Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. I should just follow my own advice. Never tweet. Truer words have never been spoken. Never tweet. It can only lead to bad things. So I tweeted earlier this morning about the full-page ads by the Quebec government in the Gazette yesterday, this morning in the French media. I posted a picture of the images from Journal and La Presse and the Gazette, the full-page ads, by the way. Oh, guess who is quote-tweeting me? Guess who is quote-tweeting me? Christopher Skeet from the CAQ government, quote-tweeting me. You know it's bad when they start off with the word respectfully. You know it's a doozy after that. Christopher Skeet. Here is my tweet, by the way. It's a full-page spread by the Quebec government, La Presse, Gazette, Journal, in parentheses, to counter all the constitutional experts, lawyers, doctors, educators, people who know what they're talking about, raising alarms over rights removing Bill 96. Christopher Skeet.
Please.
That's right, Francois. Christopher Skeet. Oh, you know it's bad when he starts off with respectfully. Respectfully. Many constitutional experts, lawyers, doctors, and educators see no such risk. You know, maybe I could believe the government on this if they were telling the truth about the consultations with the English community, because that was lacking, and we all know it. The consultations with the English community, with the Indigenous community before Bill 96 was adopted. They didn't do their job there on consultations. So, and they say they did. So if we believe them on that, maybe I guess you will believe them on their facts on this bill. But I digress. Let's continue on that theme, though. Kahnawake says it will suspend all political engagement with the Quebec government until it can provide a substantive solution regarding Bill 96. They're asking for a full exemption, saying the new French language course requirements would be a huge barrier to education for their youth. On the line, Council Chief, former Grand Chief Michael Delisle Jr. is with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So, I take great note of the community's steadfastness here against Bill 96 and saying you won't engage with the Quebec government on other matters. Let's get into that. So how much will you say, okay, communication with the government off the table until they deal with this first?
Well, a very simple example happened last week when normally every 6 months there's inspections from the Minister of Transport Quebec in our community and around our community on overpasses, whether they be roadways or railways. And we've told MTQ at this point, you're not welcome. We have every capacity and ability to do our own inspections and provide the information back to the province of Quebec and possibly bill you, reaching all the way to Mercier Bridge. In fact, that happens. So we're prepared to do what is necessary to ensure that our voice is heard.
Has that message been heard, that you won't talk about other things until they deal with this? Do you think they've gotten that message?
I believe so, but probably in a more negative fashion, because we've recently, as yesterday, been informed that this may cause problems in terms of our engagement in consultation on many files, including the Illatort Bridge, the Mercier Bridge, continuation of works, so on and so on and so on, including part of our partnership with Hertel in terms of, again, that consultation approach. So we're looking at avenues in terms of ensuring that they cannot move forward without our consultation, cooperation, and involvement. But again, our voice has been heard.
And has anyone from the Quebec government reached out to you to talk about this, whether it's, a Minister of the French Language, Indigenous Affairs? Has anyone reached out to you?
No. We're asking that it happen at the highest political level. So anything other than either the minister, the premier's office reaching out to our Grand Chief, and or the minister reaching out to either myself or somebody within council to look at, as you said, substantive measures in terms of what we were looking for moving forward in accommodation, then all bets are off.
Okay, so let's go into some of the major concerns. I do want to start off with education, the changes at the CEGEP level. I did hear Simon Jolin Barrette say this, right, on the education front. He said, well, listen, we're going to make sure that the French courses that are offered, if someone has zero French knowledge, there will be a course at that level. So does that the courses will be at an introductory level of French offered if need be, does that deal with any of your concerns?
Well, Maybe to a degree, but again, upon implementation, no one has a crystal ball on this side of the table, so to speak, or on this side of the bill/law. It's very hard to determine. And I say that because we've been in the throes of pre-negotiation, if you want to call it that, with the CAQ government on memorandums of understanding and mutual respect, which is almost laughable at this point, and a framework agreement on future negotiations based on our 1999 agreements with the provincial governments, of which there are 10 outstanding agreements and obviously need to be updated and moved forward. Those documents are at cabinet, but how can we move forward on something like that, or based on the words of ministers or the government, without something substantive, in writing, agreed upon, negotiated, and so forth? So at this point, they're words in the air.
We're with Mohawk Council Chief Michael Delisle Jr. talking about Bill 96. I do want to talk to you about justice, about the language of contracts, those kinds of things. How much of an impact will that have on your community?
Well, we believe, again, without having that crystal ball or knowing exactly what implementation will bring, we feel that the costs and or the burden will be borne by individuals who need to go into the Quebec justice system, whether it be for child care, whether it be for youth protection, whether it be for the plethora of things that normally go toward Quebec court systems, unfortunately. And we don't have any certainty in terms of us being able to communicate in the language of our choice. And really, that's what this whole bill is about, language of choice, not the dominant or predominant language within the province of Quebec under Canada. We understand that we have a role to play, and again, our voice needs to be heard. So whether it be in justice, in the examples I gave, healthcare is also another issue in terms of it needing to be understood better. And we continuously hear from whether it be Simon Barrette or Minister Lafreniere or anyone else who is speaking on behalf of Quebec that we're misinterpreting, we're misunderstanding, and we're overplaying our card, which is basically insulting.
Now, you have some friends in this fight, from my perspective, right? Immigrant groups are saying some of these provisions on the 6 months and services available to them in languages other than French will have a devastating effect. Of course, the Anglophone community is against this bill. There's a lot of groups can coalesce here, come together. Speaking of open lines of communication, maybe you'd like to talk to the Premier, but what about the communication maybe with other groups that are aligned with your interests on Bill 96? Is there any organizing going on that end?
Absolutely. As we speak now, and I'm in Ottawa at a conference, but my council is meeting on that specific matter in one part of the strategy moving forward. But we have already had that outreach in both fronts, us reaching out and them reaching out to us. In fact, this past Sunday, I was at Giroir Park on Sherbrooke Street, invited by the Anglophone, I'll call it Anglophone Coalition, to have the federal government intervene on Bill 21 and Bill 96 moving forward through Minister Lametti and Prime Minister Trudeau's comments from last Thursday. So there is already involvement and discussion amongst, that's one group, for example, but there are many others and not only Anglophone, including Francophone and any other. I hate to use the word immigrant because in our culture, I mean, we welcome everybody, maybe to our detriment going back historically, but no one here is viewed differently. We should be all equal and understood as brothers and sisters, regardless of the language or culture we practice.
Are you disappointed in how the federal government has stood up to Bill, or their lack of standing up to Bill 96?
Absolutely. I mean, it's on very many fronts, and you're speaking to, a former Grand Chief and Indigenous leader who has had to deal with, for the past 20 plus years, the notion of Canada stepping in, becoming involved. Reconciliation is the word of the day. I mean, we all saw what happened, unfortunately, with the discovery of the 215 unmarked graves based on residential school atrocities, and the numbers have continued. So for Quebec or Canada or anybody else to talk about reconciliation, I haven't seen it. It's one thing to apologize on behalf of the country. It's another thing to declare Quebec a nation. It's another thing to have these kind of conversations with us. But Minister Lametti Prime Minister Trudeau, put your money where your mouth is and start dealing with the real problems.
And along with Prime Minister Trudeau and Minister Lametti, there's also the Minister for Indigenous Relations, Crown Indigenous Relations, Mark Miller, right, who certainly talks a very good game about caring about the Indigenous community. Have you been in communication with him? Is he standing up for your concerns?
I will say we have a very good relationship. Our new Grand Chief, Kahnawake, has a very good relationship, long-standing with Minister Miller. I know Minister Miller as well, and I respect him. It's very difficult to push against the government and to take a stand in support of. We're looking at, as I said a moment ago, the Anglophone community as well as anybody else who's involved and interested in this to push the Canadian government to intervene legally against Bill 21 and then obviously Bill 96 as the current issue. But it's a massive machine, and we understand that part of that ask is to engage in a piece of Canadian legal weaponry, if you want to call it that, against something like this that hasn't been done since World War II. So call it archaic, call it antiquated, call it whatever you want. Just don't call it the Indian Act. And I'm being facetious, obviously, but there's rationale behind what we're asking. And absolutely, back to your question, are we disappointed? Yes, overall.
Council Chief, former Grand Chief Michael Delisle Jr., I want to thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me again.